What's good, my ghouls and goblins? Welcome back once again to your live weekly horror movie podcast, Reely Scared. Here we are, back in the flesh after missing last week's episode. Feels good to be back. Sorry for missing that one, but we are back and ready to eat some maggots and have a good time. How you doing, Connor? Top Goblin, how we feeling tonight?
Great. I found the coveted Natural Light Matter Day pineapple lemonade. So I'm giving them another chance. They did me dirty when we did the what was it? The Natty Breed Love Yes.
Hashtag Natty Breed Love Yes, and then I believe there was also hashtag Connie Ice Baby.
Yeah. We did that campaign, and they shut me out.
Wow.
Went a whole year without them, and I'm gonna give them another chance because this is great.
So it's great. I was gonna ask, what's the consensus on this pineapple? I guess not pineapple ale, whatever you would call it.
It's beer. It's pretty good.
I believe you. Well, I'm glad. It shows a lot of character depth on your part that you're able to sort of turn the other cheek and give them a chance, because I was very upset about that for you. I think you deserve the Natty Light sponsorship. I'm still kind of, I don't know that I've had any rendition of a Natty Light since that happened, to be completely honest with you. So I don't know, maybe I'm going to be the one who never gets over it, but I hate that they did that for you. But maybe, it's a new year, right?
Yeah.
The world's healing.
Yeah.
This could be it. We've got bigger fish to fry. So I hope Natty Light can sort of grow as well and realize that you are the ideal mascot and representative for them. It is a Wop Boy summer, after all, is it not?
Yeah, it is.
Wop Boy summer forever. Welcome back to Reely Scared. So glad to be back tonight. We've got a great show for you. If you never tuned in before, this is the weekly horror movie podcast where every single week we're joined by a special guest to talk about a film of their choice. Could be absolutely anything that they want to talk about, and we sit down, watch it, and find the interesting points in it. And we've got a great film tonight. Before we get into that, of course, be sure to do all the great things that podcasts love for you to do. You see along the bottom there that we do now have a Streamlabs for this channel. If you want to support the show in any way, you can make a donation to us at that Streamlab. Streamlabs.com/whoarethe-podcasts. Again, you don't necessarily need to for us to put your comment on the screen, for us to read them, to respond, to talk with you. It's not going to change the show fundamentally in any way, as long as you just want to support us. It helps us out, keeps the lights on, and it'll help fuel cooler opportunities in the future. So we appreciate you at streamlabs.com/whoarethe-podcasts. Of course, be sure, whatever platform you're on, whether it's live or after the fact, streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook every single week. Be sure to follow us, subscribe to us, whichever that you use. If you're on audio podcasts, again, be sure to follow us, rate and review. I got this lingering cough, so excuse me if I just mute and go away. But it's better than internet connectivity issues, which I don't seem to have tonight. Knock on wood. I could have both, so we'll see. But be sure to follow us on those podcast apps. And what else can they do to help us out on the podcast apps?
Oh, they can leave us a little cutie like Kiefer's mullet in this movie that we're going to talk about tonight. Just cutie, kind of like that. So doesn't have to be real long, just nice cutie.
A nice
short review.
A nice sweet little cutie. And if you're not already, especially be sure to follow us on Twitch as we're getting back into the gaming.
Yeah, you've been doing Resident Evil, right?
Yes, I've been playing around with Resident Evil Village. It's been a great, scary time. We've only got a little bit left. I think like maybe 2 sessions left. But I've been having an awesome time over there. And, like anything else, I had to bring a clip. If you're like on the fence, should I check it out? I got a clip for you. Here you go. What on earth was that? Look out the window. Oh. I don't like that. Look out the window. It's very ominous, and I dislike that. What's out the window? Oh! He got me. He got my ass. He got me. He got me. There you go. That's sweet golden content you can get over on our Twitch channel. Streaming games, Resident Evil Village has been a lot of fun. The recordings go up on our YouTube the very next day too, so if you miss it live, you can watch them there. But so much more fun to do it live. Love having people in the chat. You know, I've had Shug, as he says right here. I've screamed like 5 times. It's true. I've probably more than that, to be completely honest with you. But Shug's been there hanging out. My good friend Adam, who's been on this show, Adam Wassell, he's came in and hung out. There you go. Chris is giving it an endorsement. Great bits in part 5. Yeah. It's a great, fun, scary game. So go follow us on Twitch. Watch that as we get back into the gaming aspect of it as well. But enough about that. On to the topic at hand. The chat was already clamoring for him before we even started. That was remarkable to see. And his reputation certainly precedes him. Let's bring on friend and I would say chief heckler in the chat of Real Entertainment. Writer for the Akron Beacon Journal, film critic, George Thomas.
Let's be fair. I only heckle one person because he deserves it. So
let's be fair enough. Fair enough. I would absolutely.
Oh wait, Chris gets some a little, but okay, just a little. So
Chris gets it. He's a sweetheart, but he's a big fan of yours. He looks up to you, so you gotta be careful with him.
That's scary.
George, welcome on to Reely Scared, man. How are you?
Guys, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. I really have. I watched a movie I haven't seen in 25 or so years today. Enjoyed the hell out of it. I was shocked at how amazingly well it held up. So, except for the oiled up sax player, that's a bit cheesy.
Yeah, the sax player. I mean, we're probably going to spend an hour on the sax player alone.
I remember who directed it.
Well, okay, so you say that too. It's interesting. I feel like of all the things that I could see referenced when Joel Schumacher passed last year, like he's got this huge filmography, but like I didn't see people talking about Batman or St. Elmo's Fire or Flatliners. It was like not only was everybody talking about Lost Boys, but so laser specific, everybody was talking about the oiled up saxophone player. It seems like that was like the most emblematic like icon for his legacy.
You're talking about the guy who put nipples on the bat suit. It makes sense.
It does.
And I'll be honest with you, I had forgotten he directed this film. It almost makes up for putting nipples on the bat suit and turning it into that campy piece of crap 1960s TV series that I revile so much in my adulthood. So.
Well, hey, I've got the Matt Reeves Batman shirt on tonight, but I will defend the Joel Schumacher Batman as hard as I'll defend any Batman. I love those movies, but I will say you can totally see how the guy who made this made those movies. Like, I think the entire visual style and like presence of the pier and the vampires and like the parties. It could absolutely, like, that motorcycle scene is absolutely the motorcycle race in like Batman Forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can see like what interests Joel Schumacher. It's like pizzazz, leather, and just like intense, fiery sexuality.
With the sax scene, I was like, oh, I forgot this is in here. This is great. I love it. And then I was like waiting. It cut, and I was like, oh, that's it. Like, that was real quick. Cuts back to it, and I was like, this is a lot longer than I was expecting.
In some ways, this is like the quintessential MTV 80s movie.
Yeah.
That visual style, those quick cuts, all of it. And look, I've loved the movie since I first saw it. But one of the best things about the movie is the soundtrack and the way he used music there. So this was a movie of its time. From the Bullets, I want to see both you guys with one of those, but someday, by the way, to the way the film was edited quick cuts, videos, and actually, let's be honest, the overall running length, which was a sparse 97 minutes.
Yeah.
Can you picture Zack Snyder doing something like that?
Well,
No,
No.
absolutely not. Yeah, this thing is like airtight. It's so consistently fun, start to finish. It's just an absolute blast that really never slows down. And George, I wanted to ask you this anyway, as we normally ask our guests, but I'm even more fascinated hearing that you hadn't watched this movie in like 20 years. When asked to pick a horror film, I never would have expected. I don't know what I did expect, but I never expected The Lost Boys. I would love to hear what made you think that was the one you wanted to talk about.
You guys know my take on horror. Yeah. You really do. I mean, I just discovered the first A Quiet Place the other day, and I begrudgingly watched it because I knew it was a hit. And, someone we both know said, you got to see it. And I was going to review A Quiet Place 2. So being a film critic, I had to endure 1 to get to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the right kind of horror film in my eyes. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah. It's a great movie.
So The Lost Boys was the right kind of horror movie. Even when I was, it came out in 87. I was 22. Even then, I wasn't into big time gore. It's got enough gore. It's balanced out perfectly. It had a sense of humor, which I always remembered. Had I remembered Joel Schumacher directed, and I didn't until looking at the credits today, I probably wouldn't have chose it. So, but those were the primary reasons, and it was a tough choice for me between that and the original Fright Night with Chris Sarandon, which was unexpected for what it was back in the day. It's a great little B movie, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. Did the horror right. There were genuine thrills. There were genuine scares, all of that. So that's why I chose it. I mean, there were times when The Lost Boys, and I remember this, made me jump out of my seat. So between that and Fright Night, it had a better soundtrack.
Yeah.
It does have a killer soundtrack.
Yeah,
it's interesting though, because you said you're not a horror guy, and yeah, we did know that about you. But between Lost Boys and Fright Night, that's an interesting little through line. Like, were you an '80s like vampire guy?
No, back then I was just going to movies that got good reviews. You got to understand, I've been reading movie reviews since I was 9.
Wow.
There was at one time, this was a two newspaper town. There was the Plain Dealer. There is a Plain Dealer, which is basically Cleveland.com now. There was the Cleveland Press, and they had a film critic named Tony Mastriani that I used to read religiously when I was 9. And I recall, well, he was done by then, but as down the line, I started reading others. Roger Ebert. I used to watch him and Siskel and Ebert on PBS when at this point, and if I recall correctly, they both gave it a positive review and gave Fright Night a positive review as well. And that, film critics don't have as much sway as they used to. I think people use them more as a validation than anything else. But back then they had sway, and you know what? That got me in the theater for both The Lost Boys and Fright Night.
Nice.
And if I remember, Siskel and Ebert were not, I could be wrong about this, but I feel like they weren't commonly super keen on horror, or at least like pretty violent movies. I feel like they'd be quick to kind of disregard some of them as like junk cinema.
Actually, Ebert was a huge Roger Corman fan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
He even wrote a screenplay that Roger Corman filmed, if I'm not mistaken. So
really?
One of them was, one of them wasn't.
Oh, I actually never knew that. That's interesting to know. So did you catch this one in the theaters when it originally came out, sounds like?
Man, you know how much a VCR cost back then? Yeah. Let's see, Lakeshore 7, which is Diamond Cinemas in Euclid. I still remember where I saw it.
Wow.
So yeah, it was in the theater, and let's see, VCRs were like, for a good one, still $500-600, which was seriously beyond my means.
Damn.
And then VHSs were, the actual tapes were about $90, $80 around there.
Yeah, that time they'd gotten through sell-through, where the movies were like 25. So the price.
Oh, okay.
So the Paramount broke through with that with a 25 for 25 special led by Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Wow.
Such useless knowledge that I remember. Totally useless.
I love it. I love that stuff that you remember so vividly, and you're like, why? Like, you forget like the best day of your life, but you remember the most vivid, like you said, useless information. It just registers in your brain forever. From what I understand, this movie was like kind of a revival for vampire. Like by then, it like Hammer horror had this is late '80s, right? So like Hammer horror and like Christopher Lee and all that, like it kind of waned out, and like now it was kind of like Bram Stoker's Dracula hasn't happened yet, so like it's kind of this corny like in between where it's not very popular, and then this thing comes up and it's like this punk rock like glam revival of the genre.
Mm-hmm.
That pretty much sums it up, because I can't remember a decent vampire film before this that took the genre at least quasi serious. You could go back to Love at First Bite with George Hamilton, which was more comedy than anything else. And let's face it, Beyond the Bug Eating wasn't very scary. Beyond that, I don't remember anything before this in Fright Night in the genre.
And it's funny because it is. You look back at it now, and of course, it does feel so campy, but also like I would say I feel like most of the Schumacher stuff is that by design, right? I mean, that's all his Batman stuff is. They're basically feature length toy commercials, but I think they're totally. I won't get into the Batman stuff because I know
because I can't stand them.
George will leave the show, but I think it does hold up incredibly well. Goddamn, this is a fun movie. I never knew the sort of genesis of this movie, and maybe I don't know, Connor or George, maybe you heard this already or read about it recently, but the initial idea for this was like it started off as a Peter Pan film. Have you heard about this at all?
Yeah, it's like it's obvious. I mean, Sam and Michael's mother is Wendy.
Yeah.
The vampire maker is I don't know what you refer to him as. He's father, whatever you want to call him. But all those teenage vampires he makes, they're his family. And nobody wants to grow up. I mean, it spoke a lot to the moment, because let's be real. And having basically grown up in the 80s, it was the party decade. I mean, we didn't give a damn about anything else. I mean, I took what was it? Yeah, I took 4 years off before going to college. I flunked out of my first quarter at Cleveland State because I was drunk in the fall of 1983. That's where we are as my generation. That's where we were. So we were the MTV generation. It played to that crowd. I mean, I hate to keep referencing MTV, but when it first came out, it was the kind of thing you left on 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And getting a movie with those elements, and even a TV show. I don't know if either of you are familiar with Miami Vice. The concept of that was basically MTV Cops.
Yeah.
And MTV had this tremendous impact on filmmaking, and films like The Lost Boys took it and ran with it. I'll give Schumacher credit for recognizing the moment he was in, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a Schumacher vehicle. He started off, if I remember correctly, as like a costume designer in movie making, right? And then kind of works his way up, which makes so much sense.
Yeah.
He has so much. I don't want to say a style over substance guy necessarily, but he's so much a style guy first. I think, you can totally. He's so cognizant in all the style choices, all the way down to the blood with glitter mixed in, so that it catches in the light better. I'm like, glitter blood is that is it. That is the synthesis of Joel Schumacher right there.
You mentioned the MTV aspect to it, and that's one of the reasons why Kiefer actually signed on. Originally, he was like, "No way, I'm not doing a vampire movie." And then Joel told him NXS is doing the soundtrack, and he was like, "All right, I'm in."
No one is ever going to accuse Kiefer or his father Donald of being dumb. They're not. They just are. I interviewed both of them in the past. They're smart dudes, and they don't suffer fools lightly. So he knew what he was doing, and you got to give him credit for it. And he was kind of playing against type back then because he was this up and coming teen star, a la the Brat Pack, was it? In that vein, kind of. He managed to. Well, no, he didn't, because he had his issues. I was going to say he managed to avoid it, but no, he didn't. He had his fun. But he's come out still viable, still with a tremendous career. I mean, this is bad boy Jack Bauer as a bloodsucker. So
yeah. I mean, he's definitely, that I can think of, really the only one coming out of this that to this day is still really got a career to speak of too. I mean, Alex Winter, right? He did get to come back Bill and Ted style lately, but Kiefer's the only one still rocking it. Like Diane Wiest, he's really the only one that I think I still see cropping up frequently.
For Jason Patric, that was a choice. I mean, he's Hollywood pretty boy. He could have so capitalized on this. And he's the one who preferred substance over style in his career. Mm-hmm. Every interview I've ever read with the guy, all he's cared about is the work, the right role, doing quality work. Whereas if you look today, most of these actors, okay, I'm going to do this for the studio and I'm going to make a lot of money. But then they're going to let me do this. I read somewhere where he did that once with Speed 2 and a couple other movies he filmed in the same year. And he said, no mas, no more. I'm not doing that. Yeah. So he works for the sake of working for himself. Good on him. Because he could really be, he's a tremendous actor. But he could have been a superstar. Yeah. Given some of the stuff that's considered iconic to come out of that decade. Matter of fact, I also read where he was the first choice for the role of Maverick in Top Gun.
Oh, really? I hadn't known that.
And he turned it down.
Wow.
Because he said, I'm not a movie star. I don't want that, which is cool. And it's interesting. A lot of people don't realize he's wait. Before I throw this, you guys know who Jackie Gleason is?
Yeah.
He's Jackie Gleason's grandson.
That I did not know.
I did not know that.
Jackie,
that's fascinating to your point that I don't know that, right? Because I'm guessing he sort of intentionally maybe suppressed that connection.
Everything I read, no relationship with his grandfather. So I get it. So that makes sense. He said he wasn't there emotionally in his life. He was just a dude on TV or in the movie. So, hey, that's cool. I understand that.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, Connor, earlier with Kiefer Sutherland, I guess it was also a thing where Jason Patric almost didn't do this film because to the same reason. He thought like they were just basically exploiting his good looks. Like he was coming off some, I've not seen this movie. It's like Solar Babies or something like that.
Yeah. I remember the title.
Yeah. Solar Babies. And he was like the hunk in that. I guess his love interest was in that Jamie, who plays Star, Jamie Gertz.
Jamie Gertz. She's also in Twister.
Twister, yeah, she was in that as well.
The first pick for Michael was Jim Carrey, because he did Once Bitten right before this, 2 years before in '85, and Joel Schumacher was like, "Oh, you can play vampire, so let's get Jim Carrey." But Jim Carrey ended up passing on it. But yeah, he was the first choice for Michael.
Can you see Jim Carrey doing this?
No, I cannot.
Yeah.
It's an insanely different movie if he does.
But it's a weird like full circle thing, because then he'll come back around and work with Joel Schumacher down the road.
Yeah. And also, I guess Ben Stiller auditioned for this movie.
There's one I hadn't heard.
I didn't hear about that one.
Now, granted, who knows how legitimate it is? I'm reading notes and alleged articles and things about Lost Boys. So who knows? I can only vet my sources so much. But apparently, he had said he had auditioned for it, and like the two Coreys were there, and Kiefer was there, and I guess he had read for Michael, which I could kind of see that. I could kind of see him pulling that off. But I guess I don't know. Schumacher must have, Jason Patrick was saying, "I'm not going to do it," and then changed his mind. And Schumacher's like, "We got that hunky boy. Get him in here. Stiller, Carey, hit the road. We got the hunky boy in." Because that's what it seems like. A consistent thing I kept reading. It was like Schumacher's priorities. Like, I want this movie to be sexy as hell.
Yeah. I mean, he oiled up some random dude with like a real long, almost a mullet. Give him a saxophone and start rolling.
That guy, like I said, we could probably do an hour on that.
It could be the greatest piece of cinema ever put out. It's about 2 minutes long, and it's fantastic.
With a bunch of people out of rhythm. So, I'm like,
that party and just that pier in general. I'm watching that now, and I'm like, this is the greatest place of all time. I want to go there. They got a video store, a comic shop, and they got the greatest goddamn concert that's ever been held. And everybody's so into. And not only is he giant, I just looked at the actor's name, Timmy Capello, who's credited as Beach concert star, and yet his IMDb picture is, of course, him on the stage with the saxophone.
Oh my God.
He is so jacked. And even his saxophone looks like much bigger than a saxophone should. Like, even that, his saxophone looks jacked.
Yeah.
Everything about him is just like, it's like godlike. it's not even human anymore.
And his pants are pretty cool too.
The pants game in general was strong in this movie.
Yeah.
Gotta keep it
stonewashed jeans.
Stonewashed and parachute pants were the big thing back then.
Yeah.
I own both.
The party and the sax scene rules. I love, and this is something I don't know what it is about 80s filmmaking, but like when I think of something like this or something like, Escape from New York or something like RoboCop, like something about filmmaking in the 80s, they were so good at making the world feel so dangerous.
Yeah.
And like the way that they would, their version of like dangerous gangs is like everybody's wearing a costume and they got like a baseball bat or like a chain. Like it's I don't know if there was ever a version of reality in which, the world looked like that, but I love the 80s version of like dystopian danger.
Look, the 80s in general were different.
Did they look like this truly?
No gangs, but it's
motorcycle races on the beach.
More like car races on the street, which I'm sure people still do today. I mean, that wasn't uncommon. I grew up in Euclid, and there's a long, massive road, Lakeshore Boulevard, that runs from. It is what it is. Lakeshore. It's right by Lake Erie, and it runs from far out in the suburbs in the East Lake to Bracknell. And on a given Saturday night, it wasn't shocking that kids are out drag racing, whatever. Mostly we just drank in bowling alley parking lots, though. So
that's reasonable. No costumed warriors gang fights.
Mullets, plenty of mullets. Everybody had a mullet, And by the way, we drank real beer, Genesee Cream Ale.
Hey, this is again. It's a Natterday pineapple lemonade. If you can find it, pretty good. These are our plug for the night.
Well, so we're talking about the world of this film, and they of course come up with the fictional town of Santa Carla, based on and filmed in Santa Cruz. Connor, I'm sure you'd also read about their entire journey of why they created this fake town, because they did shoot it in Santa Cruz, which did
was
truly
known as the murder capital of the world, based on like 3 killing sprees in the 70s.
Yeah,
and so they were not happy.
Yeah.
And this one is also referred to as the murder capital, and like having like the sign there with murder capital of the world written on it. Yeah, they were not.
Yeah.
Schumacher knew what he was doing. Hey,
Yeah,
he created the atmosphere, didn't it?
yeah.
No, it is great. It feels for a movie that's so over the top and so silly at times. It is really ominous towards the beginning, between like all the missing persons posters and the security guard getting attacked and going missing. And as soon as they get into town, they see that the murder capital of the world on the back of the billboard, which again I guess was also based on an actual mural that was painted in Santa Cruz for a while in the midst. I think like late 70s. Yeah, they had like a mass murder spree and like 2 serial killers pop up, and then it acquired this reputation. So when it came time to acquire permits to film there, they were like, 100%, but if you're going to call it the murder capital of the world, you got to change the name. Like we have moved on from that reputation, and we do not need a pop culture like push to bring it back. Which is smart, because I think it also does. It opens them up to create their own mythology and history in that town. But it feels so dangerous and ominous, even though it's going to get so campy and erotic.
And see, that's why it holds up, because the scares are genuine.
Yeah.
The horror element in this is right on. It really is. I mean, when a film makes you jump out of your seat. I mean, you were at A Quiet Place too the other night, Connor. I don't know if you noticed me jump out of my seat a couple times.
I jumped so many times. I was out of my seat a bunch.
Yeah, when a movie does that, a horror movie does that, it's on its game.
Yeah.
And there have been horror movies where I'm like, gross, no thanks. But if you can catch me off guard and lift me out of my seat spontaneously, I'm right there. And that's another reason it holds up as well as it does.
Yeah, it really does. It does a great job. And I kept thinking this all throughout the movie of like sort of the tonal balance of all the different things that it's doing, where it doesn't feel like 2 movies cutting back and forth. Because we mentioned the Peter Pan thing. I guess Joel Schumacher really is, once he enters production, that's really when it starts to become an out and out horror film. Because there's a version of this that I guess was made for, like, it was going to be made for kids. It was going to be like a G-rated Goonies versus the vampires type movie, where like the Frog Brothers were going to be even younger. The vampires were going to be kids. It wasn't going to be violent or scary. And I guess Richard Donner was going to direct it. And then he eventually leaves to go try out this little movie called Lethal Weapon. And when it comes time for somebody else to make it, that's where Joel Schumacher enters. And he's, we got to make this movie hot. We got to make it scary. We got to make it violent. And it becomes a whole different thing once he enters the picture.
The Goonies versus the vampires premise sounds so fucking stupid. It just sounds stupid.
You can kind of see like the bones of that still. Like you can still feel a little bit with when they get to like the Frog Brothers, right? Which is a great
video. Yeah, which I want to talk about the Frog Brothers.
See, the Frog hilarious, but so goddamn earnest in what they were doing.
Yes.
Yep.
It's like these dudes we are on it. Fuck the Ghostbusters. This is us. We're on this. So
yeah.
And Corey Feldman is just. I'm looking at him today, and I'm like, really? You've just totally totally bought into this, and you're there. You're in the moment. Good for you. I wonder if he was high, but
yeah. I from what I understand, he was. From what I understand, he almost got fired from this film for that. But no, I think you nailed the perfect word, earnest. I love how serious Corey Feldman is taking this performance. Like that character never breaks. He's never making a joke. He's never like making light of what's happening. He so sincerely believes they're vampires in that town, and he's so convinced he's got to be the one to take care of that problem. And never has that moment of like, oh, we're just kids. What do we like? No, he's the one who's like, as soon as he understands where the vampires are, he's like, we're getting ready to go kill those people.
I mean, he's a teenage Van Helsing. That's exactly what he is.
Yeah. I guess Schumacher also like literally had him. He like told him, "You are Sylvester Stallone in this movie." Like that too. Like he was tasked with like watching Chuck Norris and Stallone movies.
That would make sense because the whole outfit with the bandana and
you had to have a bandana in the 80s. That was a cinematic rule.
Yeah.
His entire direction, I guess, is like, you are Rambo as like a 13-year-old. Go with it. And he totally plays it like that. Again,
nails it.
Yeah. With the complete self-seriousness that either of those guys would have played in all their movies. Which it goes against, everybody else in the movie, which is so crazy and over the top. He's brilliant in it. I love the whole comic book shop scene.
Yeah.
Very, very Unbreakable-esque with like fictional comic books somehow informing what you need to do in reality.
Yeah.
I love that vampires everywhere. Which I guess is a fictional comic they made up for this, but like you can go. I guess when you go visit the comic store, or assuming it's still there, comic stores. But I guess when you go visit, they like have the actual copy there. You can take
signed by the whole cast, and you can take a picture with it. Yeah,
and I think they even mention other horror films in this.
Yeah,
I remember the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
So it's very reverential. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
With respect to the genre.
Yeah. Totally is taking its cues from genuine horror, but also using it to come up with something that I can't think of anything even close to this beforehand, really.
You could say this is like the precursor to like pulpy, like teen horror movies that we would end up getting in the 90s and like later on in the 2000s, like Scream and stuff like that. Like it references a lot of stuff that is popular among the youth, and it's like it's aimed towards the youth, but it's scary and it has that like pulpy humor to it. So it's almost like a precursor to like what Scream would be.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Wes Craven borrowed a couple things. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
There's another smart horror film. There's another smart one. Obviously takes that from this Fright Night. Like I said, I don't remember. It's odd that I don't remember any other horror films from that era other than Friday the 13th films and Halloween movies. And it's like,
because what this does is it plays with tropes. It's the garlic and the holy water, the mirrors and the reflections and stuff. And, it's like we find out that stuff doesn't really work on them besides like the holy water. Mm-hmm. And they mess with that. They mess with the tropes and like that doesn't actually work. And I think that's so smart. Like actually playing with those tropes and throwing them into this like semi-serious movie that also has dark humor.
Well, when you have when Sam says the line, "Look at your reflection in the mirror. You're a creature of the night, Michael." Just like out of a comic book, you're a vampire, Michael. My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire. You wait till Mom finds out, buddy. Really?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's great, hilarious, great, tremendous, and it messes with that. it's a sitcom trope right there. It's that I think one of the Frog Brothers said at the end, we got a Brady Bunch here for vampires.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay.
Yeah, the script for this rules. There's so many great standout quotes when you like revisiting this. I it hadn't been quite 20 years, obviously, but I hadn't seen this in God knows how long.
It's been a while.
So it was like I kept having like those little moments of like, oh yeah, that's from this, like all those little sort of tropes and things that get referenced and homage and other stuff. I kept going, oh right, that is from this. Like I had forgotten really how iconic this movie truly is. I'd like almost underrated it, and coming back was so good. The entire like double pivot twist with Max. I'd kind of forgotten that, and I know it knocked me on my ass the first time I watched it, because they have that great. You think you got a handle on it, right? You know who the vampires are. The kids are convinced it's Max is the happy. You're like, no, it's Kiefer Sutherland. Like, I've seen that half of the movie. I got what's going on. This half of the movie hasn't figured it out yet. And you have that great, dinner sequence, which is just like this classic, like slapstick moment of like trying to get him to fall for it. And they just keep looking like assholes in front of Sam's mom, and they have that little fake out where like Michael's got to invite him in. You're like, it's like a little vampire thing, but I know he's not the vampire. So like I was so comfortable. Even now, I was so comfortable in it that when at the end they went, no, Max actually is a vampire. Even again, it made me go, oh shit, that's right.
They did that really well. It was executed flawlessly. It helps when you have award-winning performers in this kind of film. Back then, you saw Edward Herrmann in a film like that. Like this, you're thinking to yourself, what the fuck is he doing here? Same thing for Diane Weiss. What is he doing here? I mean, this isn't them. It's not what you're expecting, which made it altogether.
Wait, he freeze for you too?
Yeah, he is frozen.
Sorry, no. If you can hear us, George. Oh wait, I think we got you back. All right.
I think we got him back.
Maybe. I just want to make sure it's not just me, because that's what the trend is.
Oh yeah, he's.
Am I here?
Okay, we're starting to hear you again, friend. There we go.
Okay, there we go. You're back.
All right, back. Sorry, yeah, as you were saying, sir.
What was the last thing you heard?
Gosh, I don't know. I got so distracted in the technology era. You trailed off.
Diane Weiss.
You were talking about performers and expectations of seeing them in a film like this.
Yeah, you don't. It's not back then. It wasn't expected that you'd see an Edward Herrmann, who wasn't a box office draw, but in the hierarchy of character actors back then, and even somewhat today, is at the top of the A-list. That's who Edward Herrmann was. Same thing for Diane Weiss. Not a traditional leading lady, blah, 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 blah. Owns an Oscar, though. But again, you don't expect to see them in this pulpy kind of horror film. So there's a curveball, and it's like, I'm pretty sure it attracted more than its share of quote-unquote older audience members just because of their names. I don't know. Movies box office attendance wasn't really broken down by demographics back then the way it is today, but I'm sure there were plenty of people above the age of, let's call it 35 back then, in the theaters, simply because of that and word of mouth, which is something that was useful back then, but that doesn't really matter today because you guys have fucked up the movie industry.
Me? I try my best. I try to do what I can. No, but I think it's also like you were saying earlier, the only like horror films you could think of the 80s were stuff like Jason, Michael, the slasher movies. I think it also lends itself to what almost kind of a risk this film was, coming late 80s, where it's like that's what horror was for a decade. It was really dominated by the slasher genre. You'd have a monster movie come out, I think, once in a while that would be kind of a breakthrough hit, like The Thing or Aliens, I should say, in the 80s. And
see, I look at the Aliens film as more science fiction. Don't ask me why. It's the Star Trek nerd in me, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, that was essentially a haunted house in space.
Yeah, so. But these the classic monsters, right? Like your mummies, your Frankensteins, or your vampires. It was like that was no longer in vogue, right? And but Schumacher sees this and he goes, no, I gotta take on vampires. I'd also read a quote where he'd said like, vampires are the only ones you can make sexy, so those are the only ones I want to do. It's like Frankenstein will never be sexy.
Frankenstein is not sexy, is what he said.
Well, Joel, I hope you saw a little film called I, Frankenstein, which begs to differ with Aaron Eckhart. He's ripped and shirtless. He's looking hot.
And he has a couple scars.
Yeah, he's got a couple scars because he's a Frankenstein monster.
Yeah, so he has a couple.
Yeah, no, but I think it's like this movie hits the exact time it needs to and has all these little things to it that can bring a different audience. I guess they still even made an effort to go ahead and market it to kids, even though it was so overtly no longer a kids movie. They were like, let's make toys, comics, trading cards, let's get it.
But you talk about bringing different audiences. Can we talk about the probably the true star of the film, Bernard Hughes? Grandpa's great. He's so on the down low in this freaking movie. Like he's vapid. He doesn't know what's going on. And then at the end, he gets the line of the flick.
Yes.
It fades to dark. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's great. He has a lot of good moments, like explaining the second shelf in the fridge. Is where I keep my root beer and my Oreos. Don't touch the second row. And then he has the car with the horn, and he's always going over to Widow. Can't remember her name, but always going on dates over there. Yeah. And then that final line of the movie coming from the grandpa is just perfect. You're like, he knew the whole time.
Oh yeah, and he's playing until he's needed.
Yeah.
And when he's needed, he shows up at just the right time. And to my mind, that's like, you know what? That's just brilliant right there. It really is. Because they all just thought he was this doddering old horny guy. And nothing could be further from the truth.
I love the implication that like he's been dealing with this the whole time, but for some reason just neglected to tell any of his moving family members. By the way, terrible vampire problem in this town. Like so much so that he's just fed up with it by now. Like
he just wanted to do his taxidermy and just live in peace. He was just sick of the damn vampires in this town.
It's great. Yeah, no, I love him. Just wandering around aimlessly, drinking soda and eating candy. I was like, that's me. That finally,
that will be me.
I've seen myself represented on the big screen. It's such a treat. I love also kind of exploring the vampire underworld. That's what we flip back and forth between the most. It's like Sam, in his sort of frenzied thing with the Frog Brothers and eventually finding out Michael's a vampire, and like really he's the one who's taking it on himself to fix like Michael's he's the one who's turning into a vampire, but I feel like for me he's not really the character I'm like drawn much to. Mm-hmm. Like beyond, I feel like he's kind of underwritten, right? Like that's maybe the only critique I have is like I didn't care when Michael's on screen. I don't care too much because it's like, okay, he's the guy turning into the vampire, whereas like Sam and the kids, like that's where the real fun is at. But all the stuff with the actual vampires, Kiefer Sutherland and his gang, I love like exploring their weird like sewer vampire subculture hippie thing.
To your point, when I first saw it, I saw this when I was younger. Like I was probably like 12 when I first saw this. So about 15 years ago, I saw it for the first time, and I was more, whenever the Frog Brothers and Sam were on the screen, or Kiefer and his guys were on the screen. I was more into that stuff, and I didn't really care about Michael. But and I've seen it a few times since, but watching it for the first time in like 5 or 6 years, I was really drawn to Michael's character arc in this one, like this viewing. I don't know why, but I, paid attention when Michael was on the screen in this viewing. Have no idea why, but
pretty boy.
Yeah. He's beautiful.
Sorry, he is.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
I mean, he is.
Yeah.
He is the epitome of pretty boy,
and he was cool. He was just really cool.
Yeah.
Watching it. I was like, oh, he's so cool.
But you notice what Schumacher did with that character and Jason Patrick? Did you pick up on the Jim Morrison references?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I that's gotta be an homage to that resemblance because it's strong.
Yeah.
And they even included a remake of a Doors tune on the soundtrack done by Echo and the Bunnymen. But it's like it didn't really register until this afternoon. I'm like, hey, there's a door. Oh, whoa, wow.
Yeah.
Morrison.
I love that the vampires apparent like only real connection to like their humanity is that they love the Doors and have a poster in their weird like underground cave of Jim Morrison.
Yeah, it was a resort that fell during a earthquake, I think.
Yeah, it was built on a fault line, and when an earthquake hit, bye resort.
Yeah.
It's just a cool place where there's just a giant Jim Morrison poster just hanging off the wall, and it's just decrepit in there, but it's a cool place to hang out for vampires.
When I was a teenager, we had a cool place like that. Mind you, I could drink at 19, so the bars closed. There was this bridge area in the woods of Euclid. We called it the Hill. We'd buy a couple cases of beer, me and my buddies, and we'd drink till like 5:30, 6 in the morning.
I wonder if that's just like normal for every like teenager, is to have this place where they just hang out where they're not supposed to hang out. And there was an abandoned cement factory, and we just called it the factory. It had like someone had like put up a tire swing in the middle of it. You would just swing on it, and people would just graffiti in there, drink, just hang out. It was like the spot.
Well, we spent so much time after bar hours at this spot me and my buddies had. We had logs set up, a fire pit set up, everything.
Yeah.
And on a hot summer night, there was no place better to be.
Yeah.
You can't do it now because you could see the bridge from the highway near where I live, and you would be able to see a fire and everything. But it was cool, and that's what this resort is. I mean, let's face it. If you're a teenager back then, I'm acting like this is real. If that was available to you, where the hell would you be?
Yeah.
I feel like that's like such the hallmark of like your reckless youth, right? Like all you want to do is stuff you're not supposed to do. So you got to go find a place where nobody will stop you from doing it, right?
Yeah.
I never had like an abandoned facility quite to hang out in or like under the bridge. But for me, it was always like, like going to punk shows and in clubs and stuff and band practices in some shitty basement and house shows and things like that. Like it was more nomadic than having that one spot. But like that was that's exactly what it was going to, those backyard shows and things like that. And just being a complete nuisance to anyone who would be around me.
Same difference. You were looking for someplace to escape to.
Yeah.
No one else is going to find you. Mind you, we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
So we were out till 5:30 in the morning. I was still living with my mother. She had no flipping clue where the hell I was.
Yeah.
I was out with my friends.
Yeah. I love Michael's whole like journey into that world too. It's like such a dreamy sequence of events. Like it's bizarre. First, you have the whole thing of borderline creepy on his part, following Star through the pier. Though it seems like that's by design. They're doing like a vampire honeypot operation on him, right? To lure him out.
Yeah.
Lure him out, and they have that bizarre, motorcycle. Like I said earlier, motorcycle race on the beach. It almost goes off a cliff. And at no point, Michael decides, like, you know what, this sucks. You guys are awful. I'm going home. He's like, no, I want to be as cool as you guys. Like, what's next?
see that. What's odd is that Team Angst thing is there too.
Yeah.
The motorcycle scene.
He wants to be. He's a new kid. He wants to be cool.
Yeah.
He wants to be cool. He wants to be accepted. And these seem like the quote unquote in crowd.
The moment the motorcycle scene on the beach hits, I was like, oh wow, the angst in this movie is just top notch, like so angsty, and that just keeps getting heightened as it goes on, because then they like take him to the bridge right after
the first flight scene. That first,
and I was like, wow, this is so angsty. Joel is just hitting the angst like right on the nose.
And the Chinese food scene, still kind of gross,
Yeah, like I'm good not eating Chinese food for a little while. After it happens every time I see this movie, I'm like turned off by Chinese food for a little while because I'm like maggots and then the worms. I'm like, oh god,
guys, protein.
Yeah,
protein.
Yeah, yes. In some cultures, that's a perfectly acceptable meal, right? Well, I don't know. I don't know if any culture's eating a maggot. I don't know. I feel like maggots are still. I guess they'd probably have protein value though. If you're
protein value,
I'm sure Bear Grylls has choked down a lot of maggots in his life. So at the very least, that's true. It definitely has that kind of weird coming of age aspect to it as well, where it's like he wants the girl, he wants to be accepted, he wants to be special. And it's all those desires of a young person are his downfall, because that's what they play on, until they get him to become a vampire, which is also like an interesting thing that they do want to, I guess, make more vampire. Like they've selected him. They're out there killing people, but they selected him.
But you notice that they don't kill anybody in their age group, if I recall correctly.
No.
They're picking off the older folks.
Yeah.
The security guard. They're picking up. They're going after older people.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the kids is implied because all the kids are going missing. Although it could be the murder capital in spite of also being full of vampires. It could also just be full of murderers too. I don't know, but yeah, they don't show it because I guess that might be a little too
over the top. I think it's why you don't see Laddie turn into a vampire until near the absolute end.
Yeah,
right.
Because see, that's supposed to be the number one rule of vampire making, isn't it? Children are off limits.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I remember that from like Interview with a Vampire, right?
Yeah, don't ask me how I remember that.
No, you're right. George, I think you're a secret vampire like expert.
Expert. No, I have no problem with vampire films. I generally don't. There aren't a lot of good ones.
Yeah. They can't all be. They can't all be worthy of us sitting down and watching the entire series live on stream, right? But only once in a while do you get something that good.
The vampires in Supernatural were cool.
Yes, that you know what, you did spend a good. Last time you were on the show for Lovecraft Country, you spent plenty of time letting me know I gotta watch Supernatural, and I told you beforehand. I still haven't even gotten close to.
You haven't even cracked that one, have you?
Not even hit the pilot. One day, maybe when I like retire, I'll have time to watch a 15-season show.
Retire.
And by then it'll have been rebooted, brought back. There'll have been like 4 movies. It'll be even longer by then. We should talk about these Frog Brothers a little bit more because I love their commitment to the mission once they finally understand like who the vampires are, and they've got to go get them. Like
they go right into the den,
and they've got the whole list of like, I love the sequence of them like getting their supplies, right? They're like,
the church scene is I've forgotten all about that scene.
Yeah,
it's
that's great.
Classic.
During the baptism, they're just like filling up their canteens full of holy water, and they're like,
yeah, that's great. And I do like that they, like you mentioned earlier, Connor, I like that the film goes like, okay, some of those things are bogus, and then like the more old-fashioned ones aren't. Like, you know, a good old-fashioned stake through the heart, that's always going to get the job done. And like the holy water, it's like, you know, there's some divine element to it, so that works. But like some of the sillier stuff doesn't. And they also obviously keep the whole trope of like Max gets invited in, he gets welcomed in, and so I guess that's why during the dinner scene, like none of their tricks work because like you know he's broken the spell or whichever by being welcomed in. But I love the sequence in their commitment to the mission, how serious they take it, how like they don't even care if Sam's on board. And we haven't really talked, I guess, too much about Corey Haim in this, which it is. I didn't realize this. This is the first time those two were ever, you know, him and Feldman were ever in a movie together. I didn't realize it starts with this one because for me, this is like the most iconic one. Because then it's like teen comedies and stuff after that. So naturally, this is the one I would think of. But I didn't know this was the first one. I didn't realize that.
And what's scary, what's plainly evident is the chemistry those two had together.
Yeah.
The way they played off one another is just absolutely, without a doubt, brilliant and something you didn't expect in actors of that age, especially actors of that age getting together for the first time.
Yeah, they're obviously like they have a ton of chemistry that you know carries over to all their other movies where it's like they have this lifelong relationship and friendship, and you know they're connected in their careers. And Corey Haim's good in it too. I mean, he's a great contrast as like kind of the cheesy like new kids on the block 80s kid, right? And then he's, you know, trying to hang out with these super hardened kids who you just want to kill monsters that they know exist. But like they all take comic books, like they somehow are like running the comic book store too. Like they're 10 years old and they're in charge of the comic book store too. I don't know how they like swung that gig. And I love that's their connection. Like it's so cheesy but so good at like the way they take him seriously. He's like, oh, you can't put Superman 93 with, you know, Action Comics 112 because this plot hasn't even happened yet and it's gonna spoil. Like I love that's where they're like, okay, maybe this kid can hang out with
us. Business.
Yeah, he's not some goober like we thought. And then the when they finally go down there to get the vampires, it's like another great where the movie kind of gets back to its horror roots where it has a little bit.
Before that, the bit where they're checking each other's like supply packs, I thought was great when they get out of the car and they're like checking it off and just buckling each other up. I was like, that's a great scene.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like anti-vampire recipe of like, I don't know, holy water and like dunk a bunch of garlic in it. Like
bathtub of all things.
Yeah, we'll come up with like a brew to use on them. You know, just throwing shit at the wall. And then they go down there and the visual of the, you know, them hanging from the ceiling.
Like bats.
Yeah, I thought that was super cool.
What was super? The hair hanging. It's like,
right, you know, hair sprayed into place whenever they're walking around, but you know they're upside down, and they got like these freaky vampire feet you can see in a couple shots too, which I feel like I'd never really seen that before. That was like some effect they came up with. That's where you really see them flip into like hardcore vampire mode for the first time too, where you really see the fangs and the eyes, I think. Or I think they might reveal it to Michael. Yeah, they reveal it to Michael early on when they go on a killing spree in front of him.
Yeah,
that's
when
true.
They go, which is also great when they're in that tree.
Yeah,
they're just hanging out, about to attack some partiers. But we do see the eyes and the fangs there, but
change in the cranium.
Yeah,
right. The prosthetic on the head and stuff. And I'd also read that they like had these, obviously they had special effects contacts, but for this that for one reason or another they had to like construct them out of glass.
Oh wow.
So they're putting these glass contacts in that these actors can like really only wear for 3 or 5 minutes at a time, or their eyes are like hyper dried out and like in pain. And there's in this scene after they kill, I think they kill Alex Winters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he wakes up and he looks over and that tear comes down. I guess it was one of those movie magic moments where like that wasn't scripted, it wasn't an effect. It was like he literally, his eyes are like in anguish, and he started to cry, and they were like, "That's a great take. That hits like a whole new layer. You're like crying at the death of your friend. We're gonna keep that in there." But no, it was just Kiefer Sutherland's eyes like dried up to hell, wanting the contacts to be taken out. Can you imagine that? Like panes of glass in your freaking eyeballs. That would be so painful.
Yeah, I'd pass on that.
My first set of contact lenses.
They were glass?
They were hard plastic.
Okay.
It wasn't soft plastic like it is today. It was hard plastic, and it's like, you notice what I'm wearing on my face now.
Yeah, you do not want glass in your eyeball ever. That's a horrifying thought. But it looks great in this. I'm probably easier to paint on.
Yeah.
I know. I'd have to ask. I referenced it earlier. We'd have to ask Christina Patterson, who watched.
Yeah, but you had a prosthetic eye person on months ago.
Yeah, watching a great series of vampire films, as you know.
You sure she didn't work on this one?
Right, you probably should look, right. If she was doing this gig in 1987, probably, yeah, she probably did do it. Love to see in the chat. Favorite ghoul, happy Thursday, really scared, and Watt Bam sending all the love and spooky vibes. We're sending all the same to you. Thank you very much, Jessica. My favorite ghoul, love to see you. Yeah, I love the scene where they stake Alex Winters, and his death scene's kind of horrifying. He like disintegrates.
Provides a shower. Ooh.
Yeah, like vomits vampire goo, blood all over everybody.
It was not her who did the contact lenses. It was Morton Greenspoon.
Okay. Our man
He
Morton.
slimed them.
Yeah, they get slimed.
Yeah.
They get slimed. Great. I love that scene. That's like one of the first 10. And then like after that happens, it's just like tension for the rest of the movie because it's like vampires are up. They can't come outside yet. Countdown till sundown. We got to figure out what we're going to do.
Of all the Schumacher's films, this is probably the best paced building to something. And mind you, after looking back at his filmography, there are a couple other things he did that I like too. But this was probably his best paced film, and he gets the tension. What you just mentioned gets it perfect until there's that release at the end, especially after when Mom decides to sacrifice herself. I don't know what your reaction was in that moment. Well, I remember thinking in the theater, what the f- is she doing? But I had the same visceral reaction. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
But he did everything right, pacing this film and drawing out that tension as long as possible.
Right. Yeah. And I love, because then like the last, I wouldn't quite say it's like home invasion, but it kind of is. It's like they got to hunker down, at Sam and Michael's house and, prepare. They're getting ready, they're planning their weapons, their plan for when the rest of the vampires show up. And it's so much fun once they do, like the chases through the house. Every kid gets to like kill a vampire, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
You have the one who falls in the bathtub is great.
Yeah, and that's where all the blood comes from. Is that scene? It just starts coming up through like the bathtub and like the sinks, the toilet.
But did you notice the look in the great acting there? The Frog Brothers' eyes. Oh, we actually got one. We did it.
Yeah.
Here's surprise. It's like, okay.
I love that they're basically right. Like it's not a thing where it's like, okay, they're super serious and then they learn immediately they're out of their league and they get punked by the vampire. It's like, no, they're right and they're totally capable of dealing with it. Like because they do for the most, like they need help by the very end, but they do. They kill these vampires. I love the blood that you mentioned, Connor.
I loved it. I was like, I forgot about this. This is so good. Like, it's so over the top. Just blood literally just coming out of the pipes everywhere.
Yeah.
You like
very...
I love over the top like this. Like, it's just so... It's campy. It's just like, where is all this blood coming from, and why is it coming like out of like the
one
kitchen
vampire
downstairs? Like, it's one vampire just coming out of literally, if there's a drain somewhere connected to a pipe, blood. It's just so funny. Like, not like a laugh out loud funny, but it's just like, it's good to see in like a horror movie like this. Like, it's just like one of those moments that makes me happy in a horror movie.
Well, it feels to me, it felt very like Sam Raimi Evil Dead. So like,
yes, exactly.
Not a surprise at all that you loved it.
Yeah.
It is a great unexpected consequence of killing the vampire in the bathtub. All your plumbing.
Because you would just think he would like dissolve, which he eventually does, and that's why like I thought I remembered happening. I didn't remember the blood coming out of everywhere. So when I saw it, it was just a pleasant surprise.
And I love the beat of like him getting so cocky. He's like, garlic? That doesn't work.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, bitch, well, you're taking a dunk in the holy water. And he just
gets him.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of great angry dog action in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Diane Wiest almost getting chomped on. Like that was pretty, kudos to that dog performance. Very scary dog. Very rabid. Should have won an award for that, flipping that switch like that. It was very intense to see. What happens to the other one gets impaled by an arrow, right? He gets shot with an arrow.
Yes.
Yeah. The first one misses him, and
he's
caught. Like, you missed, and then he was like, the first time, right in the chest.
And he hits the stereo, so he explodes.
Yeah. Wait, yeah, he does.
Stereo,
that's right.
Good Times playing by NXS and Jimmy Barnes. So
yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, it's such a great final sequence. And then finally you get what you're waiting to get all movie at the end, which is Michael versus David vampire fight. You're like, yes. As soon as Michael comes down, he's got the prosthetics on the face, and you're like, oh boy, these vampires are about to go at it, and they're flying around the house and whipping each other in the walls. It's like, it's such a great, like, over the top action. Like, you almost, again, you keep seeing like the clues that this guy's going to make Batman movies, because it's basically a superhero battle at the very end. The way these two guys are throwing each other around the house.
Yeah.
Not quite as big or as expensive as one, but it's great. And we talk about Grandpa, his taxidermy is the ultimate downfall of Kiefer Sutherland.
Which animal got him? Do you remember?
He gets stabbed on antlers, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
The antlers.
Yeah, gets killed on the taxidermy deer, which I guess they wanted to do a version too, where like, they wanted to leave room that Kiefer Sutherland wasn't going to actually die in the movie.
Sequel.
Exactly, because they, and obviously they did do sequels to this. I don't know if either of you. I've never seen the.
I've never seen it. I think they did 2 sequels.
Yeah, they did 2 straight to video. Corey Feldman, I think, is the only person who came back for them as like an adult Frog Brother. And I watched the trailers for them today, but that's as deep as I think I'm interested in going, unfortunately. But Schumacher wanted to do a sequel called The Lost Girls, which, there you go. That's, to me, that's the same as like Cameron going in, James Cameron, like on the whiteboard, and writing a $sign next to Alien, and makes it aliens, and everybody's like, yes. It's like Schumacher comes in, he's like, what if they were lost girls? I'm like, 100%. Hell yeah, let's make that movie. Nobody ever makes it. It's a shame, but they wanted Kiefer Sutherland to come back for that and be the villain of The Lost Girls, and they were going to be like biker chick vampires, and I'm like, that's a $500 million idea right there. I can't believe nobody gave it.
Didn't somebody steal that one and run with it?
Have you seen a vampire biker chick movie?
Not biker chicks. I thought bikers. I could be wrong. I don't know.
I would expect you. You're our resident vampire expert, George. I'm coming.
No, okay.
So
you're relying on me for that. Sure. Okay.
Would that be? That wouldn't be From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, they got the. So that's a good point. Biker bar, right? You don't get a lot of vampires on bikes, but it's implied that they ride them. Yeah.
You know what screwed up? That's another vampire movie that I like.
I love From Dusk Till Dawn. It is so good.
Oh, the other one's harassing me now. Okay.
Yeah, we got you on the show, so we need the other Thomases to come in and heckle you for once. That movie fucking rules. That would make for a stellar double feature with this. Those are two just outrageous, over the top vampire movies
on a cold, chilly October, November Saturday night with fresh popcorn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, those two would play really well together. I mean, that movie rules too. And then, but then for the finale, like we mentioned earlier, you finally get that Max reveal, which I think, like I said earlier, it plays so well that even kind of knowing it already, but it's been such a long time, I'd forgotten, and it kind of knocked me on my ass again. And I was like, wow, this is such a great reveal after you think the movie's over, and even when the mom comes home and it's like, oh, how are we gonna explain this to mom? Like, you think you've got the rest of the movie charted out, and there's just like that extra 10 minutes at the end where it's like, nope, the ride ain't over.
And he's so creepy looking. Like Kiefer and his gang are pretty creepy looking, but Max is scary.
Yes, he is. Very much so.
And that's the only time really in the movie, even with the Frog Brothers and such, it's like, oh no, you actually are totally out of your league. Like, there is somebody who's got a leg up on you, who understands the rules better than you, and he's got everybody dead to rights. He's got the mom. He wants to like capture and claim her, as his thrall or whichever. He wants Michael to be in his family. And he's got them all, and then again the great final joke of just Grandpa driving through the house and killing him with what kill, like, oh, he impales. What does he get stabbed?
He's got huge ass stakes on the front of his vehicle.
That's right. Yep.
And it's like, Grandpa is gangster. He knows what's going on at all moments. I'm going to play the fool for only so long.
Yeah.
Do you think so? Do you think Grandpa it's an act he's putting on, or is he just like so nonchalant about it?
I think Grandpa is. I think he's playing. I don't want to call him a fool necessarily, but I think he's laying back and watching shit unfolds, and when it starts to get weird in the background, behind the scenes, he's preparing for what he has to do down the line. That's the only way to explain it.
I think he's playing. I think he's like old man Van Helsing, where like he doesn't want to be too known because he's like basically the only protection that people can have, because nobody really knows like this guy like knows about the vampires and can like has a defense system against them. So staying safe is just playing an old fool, and when things hit the fan, he's gonna bust out the old wagon with the stakes on the bumper.
And I love the idea that Grandpa is like secretly the Van Helsing of Santa Carla. Like he's put his roots down, and every once in a while these vampire groups, they get a little too organized, and he's got a he literally is so prepared that he has a vampire killing mobile. It's great, don't get cocky, kids. The old generation will come back and get you if you get too loud. Grandpa keeps you in shape.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, basically. He's great. He reminds me of like a Twin Peaks character almost, just like this loot, like he's from the taxidermy to like the weird aimlessness, and then like the reveal that he knows that what everybody does. And it's just like I love that character. And it's a great way to end the movie. It really is. Well, I was gonna say it really is surprising they didn't make another one, but again, I guess they did. But
well, the ending threw me because I didn't really remember the ending. And so when he just aimlessly, like, we just see him walk to the fridge. We don't see his face or anything. And I'm like, oh no, Grandpa's a vampire. Like the widow was a vampire or something, and now he's a vampire. And then he just turns around and says, the one thing I hate about this town is the damn vampires. And I was like, that is so good to end on.
Yeah, and it really does. It's just 2 credits.
Yeah.
They don't cut back to the family or like, big wide shot out of Santa Carla. It's like, and scene. Movie is like, it's, not many of movies these days end on a good one-liner like that.
Yeah, because I feel like if that movie came out today, like in theaters, people would be erupting in clap. Like,
yeah,
like applause. They would just be cheering because that is such a cool moment to end. Just cut right the credits on. So good.
I would love to watch this proper with the crowds. I guess like Santa Cruz does, like probably not the last year or so, but I guess they do these big like outdoor screenings every year of a movie, and it's like people come far and wide, and like actors from the movie show up, and it's like a whole party, which is so funny because like Santa Cruz was so like, I don't know about this. You're gonna ruin things for us again, but it ends up being this weird like tourist attraction. They come, to Santa Carla. For all intents and purposes. It's a great goddamn movie. I hadn't watched this in so long, and I'm happy that we did it this way and could talk about it. I don't. Is there anything in the Lost Boys that we felt like we missed? Anything that we didn't quite hatch out yet?
No.
I think we hit it all.
We hit it all, and it stands up. What is it? Damn, 34 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Jesus.
Wow.
34 years.
Yeah, 34 years, and there's.
Are either of you 34?
No.
Go
No.
for yourself.
But that shows the testament to this movie and how well it holds up. Because I'm 27 and Taylor, you're 29.
Yeah, I will be this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So and we both love this movie, and I know people that are younger than me, and they're like, "This is my favorite movie." So, and people are like younger, like the next generation is discovering this movie now and loving it. So it holds up so well that each generation is going to find something to love about it, and I think that's what's special about this movie is that it just timeless. Holds up so well.
It's I can't believe I say this about a Schumacher film. It's a great film.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. It really is so well, like so tonally balanced. Like I was saying earlier, it's like, especially considering that it was, beefed up from a kid's movie script based on Peter Pan. Although, by the way, I still think Peter Pan being a vampire is like kind of a cool idea that I'd like to see somebody explore. I think that's kind of it's kind of a cool twist. Like, it totally lines up, which is where obviously how they think of this in the first place. But, coming from a script for kids and, moving from one vision to the next, that's so outrageously different. It's like, there's so much opportunity for this to feel, weird, like weirdly unbalanced, like it's a couple different movies, happening at the same time, but like, no, it's so well balanced. It, when it needs to be scary, it is. When it needs to be funny, it is. And those two things don't feel like they're, disrupting each other. Like it totally, it is that perfect. Like it achieves everything it wants to. That's why it holds up so well. And I think it does have. It's got kind of this like cultural legacy half-life where it's like I know they're like are publishing comics for it right now. That I think are about the Frog Brothers naturally as your heroes, and like I've not read those though. I kind of like to after this. I know they still put out like obviously collectibles and things, and I think I joked about it earlier, but it's true. They are in the process of developing this into a TV show as well. But it is for the CW, which if anybody's read the Powerpuff Girls script, take that for what you will. I won't go into it with any expectation. Oh, what are those?
They are postcards
from Santa Carla.
Yeah,
that rules.
with like facts on the back of them. So and then movie stills. So
that's sick.
Pretty cool. I get these in I got these last year in like a subscription box.
Okay.
It's a pack of them. So yeah, it's just like you said, they keep making stuff for this movie.
Yeah, it's still out
there. A buck in it.
And I guess it'll come back in some version or other if they actually do get the series off the ground. I mean, not for nothing, right? I mean, at the start, I know you're a fan, George. Supernatural, in some rendition, is a CW joint, right? Like maybe it wasn't at first, but it became one eventually. Or
it started on
WB,
the WB, and it merged with the Paramount Network or UPN, and the CW was born.
Yep.
And Supernatural was the only show to start on the WB and end on the CW.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Well, so there it is. I mean, maybe there's room for the Lost Boys show to not be awful, but there's maybe also room for.
I mean, we all read the girl script.
I generally hate remakes, but I'd really like to see what a director with some vision today could do with this material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really would.
I would love to see Radio Silence, who did Ready or Not, do something with this property. I feel like they would be the perfect fit, and that's actually really funny because I'm compared this to like Scream in the 90s. They're doing the new Scream. Right. So I give them Lost Boys next. They could knock it out of the park.
Also, wouldn't shock me at all if they were like, "Oh yeah, Adam Wingard's making this now too."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
because I feel like every week I wake up to a new Adam Wingard thing getting greenlit.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's room to bring it back, but whoever does has to definitely have a tight vision because this certainly does. And above all, they need to know you got to make it sexy. You got to make it hot.
Yeah, you gotta keep the sexy sax man in there.
Yeah, you got to bring him back. That would be a huge missed opportunity. You got to bring back saxophone Thor. He's so important. George, thank you so much for bringing the Lost Boys to us.
Thank you.
It's been awesome talking about this one.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Appreciate it.
For all the good ghouls and goblins and maggots out there, where can people find you online?
The only place I like to be found online is on Twitter @by George Thomas. Give me a follow. Some sports stuff because that's the full-time gig, but I do movie reviews and movie coverage as time allows for the Akron Beacon Journal and Gannett newspapers. So, like this week, I've got a review of A Quiet Place 2. That's at beaconjournal.com. And I got a review of Cruella at beaconjournal.com. And Cruella is better than it has any right to be. It's just go.
That's as good of a sell as I need because we joke and stuff, but you got to value George's opinion, especially if he picks the Lost Boys. You got to value. You've been writing about film for a long time, as you yourself have said. You've seen them all. I think there's not many that you've missed. So if something is worth the George Thomas endorsement, I say you got to give it a watch.
Appreciate that, fellas.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I almost forgot. It is the last show of the month, which means it's time to announce what we're watching and talking about next month. So let's pop that up real quick here for June. Also, I can't believe it's fucking June. I do this every time we announce.
Every month you do this.
I can't fucking believe but it's true. I can't believe it's June. What the? This year's halfway over. June. Here we go. Next Thursday, June 3rd. We're keeping the Who Are They, the WAP Boy Summer Love going on as we welcome on Nick Malbach, of course, co-founder of the channel, co-host of Real Talk, Wrestle Real, and director of A Shattered Diamond, on to Really Scared in the Hot Seat for the first time to talk about Jordan Peele's Us. I haven't seen that movie since it was in the theaters, and I like it a lot. So I'm excited to revisit.
That's a weird freaking movie.
It is a weird freaking movie, and I'm excited to revisit it and also learn, why Nick picked it. It's going to be a fun one. Next week, us with Nick. June 10th, we're going to be talking about. Now, this is interesting because we have not hit any of these big slasher series this year yet, and we're finally going to do it. We're welcoming on the Tyrant, Ty Lieberman of the Finstock Exchange and the Movie Trivia Schmodown, to talk about the original Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street, the very first one. And it's fascinating because Ty has seen a lot of movies, but is traditionally not great with horror. So we're giving him a classic here, and I can't wait to get his thoughts on it. A Nightmare on Elm Street, June 10th. The very next week, hey, we talked about this one a couple times tonight, I feel like.
Yeah.
June 17th, we're welcoming on friend of the channel, quiz show, Jeff Alterman, co-host of Schmo Me the Money, to talk about Ready or Not. That's going to be a blast. I think that's going to be one of the more popular horror movies of like the last decade. That's a big one. That movie's a blast. Another one I've been meaning to revisit, so I can't wait to finally do that. And speaking of can't wait to finally do that, as I mentioned last week, we did miss the show, unfortunately, kind of threw our schedule off. So Paige Farrow was so gracious to move her episode back a whole month to help us out. So June 24th, we will finally have Paige back onto the show to talk about Sinister, which is, scientifically rated the scariest film ever made. What a hell of a distinction. I can't wait to watch Sinister again. So there it is. Great month. 4 movies, 4 great guests. That one's going to be an absolute blast. Can't wait for June. WAP Boy summer continues. On all shows on this channel, Really Scared. It really truly begins. So get your pineapple natty lights. Gas up your hog and hit the beach. It's gonna be a hot one. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate ya. And you know what? Hey, I mentioned it earlier. I'm thinking it's not too late. So if you're watching us on Twitch, stick around. If you're not watching us on Twitch, head over there, because I'm thinking in about 20, 25 minutes or so, I might do some Resident Evil Village tonight. We're going to go kill us a junk wizard. So tune in. George has no idea what's going on. Tune in then. Tune in next week. Thank you for watching and listening tonight, Ghouls and Goblins. Thank you, George, once more as you snack away. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry, I had to get some in.
We
like
all
father, like son. Like father, like son, my friend. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Good night, Ghouls and Goblins.
Stay spooky.
Stay spooky.